hi Fleur, thanks for talking to us today. We're really excited to chat to you and find out more about what you've been up to. You've had a really varied career in theatre. You've been an actor, producer, headed up the literary department. So can you tell us a bit about how it all began and what got you into theatre in the first place?
Yeah, well, it started off obviously at school, as most things do. And I was really lucky to be able to do drama at school through the English department, but as well as drama. And that was just the way that it was when I was growing up, luckily. And we had lots of school trips to the theatre and stuff. So then I was like, this is what I want to do. So, I come from a working class background. My dad's an electrician. My mum's a housewife. So I had no idea how to get into any of this. So I did drama at school, and then I did it at A level, and then I took a year because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get into the arts, to be fair, and I didn't know anyone who was in the arts, and it was really quite difficult. And then I spoke to someone about drama school, so it was like, right, I'm just going to audition. So I trained at. I got in. I was very lucky. I trained at Guildford School of Acting. Did 3 years there, and on leaving there, I moved to London. So I'm from Nottingham, the Nottingham, Derbyshire area originally, and I was I just worked, as an actress for a bit. So I worked with various different theatre companies, sometimes for no money at all, sometimes paid work, which was really great. But actually, I got to work with some really good people. So very early on, I got to work with people like Mark Ravenhill. And actually, he auditioned me for something completely different. It was a Christmas show at Birmingham. And I had to sing, and I can't sing, but they remembered me. And then when he was doing a show later, he got in touch to see if I'd work with him. So never say never is always what I say. Even if you don't get the job, you might get another one. So, I worked with people like Mark Ravenhill, and through the show that I did with him, I met Anthony Nielsen, who's the most fantastic writer, and I got to work with him. And then I did some TV work, and really I was just, an actor until I started a family, and that's when life kind of changed for me. So I had my little girl in London, and then we decided that we were going to move out of London, and I moved back to the Midlands. And that was when I started directing some shows, because I was looking after my kids, but I just still wanted to keep my hand in. And then we moved from there to Scarborough. I had another baby in the meantime, and that was because my husband is a production manager. So he moved there, and then from me, so I moved as well. But as an actor, I'd always worked in box offices as well as acting, so that I could drop one, do the other, pick one up, and go back in and out. And that seemed to be really good in the West End, in London. It was something that was really easy to drop in and out of all the time at that time. But then when I moved to Scarborough, I just got a job in the box office, in the theatre. And then when I got talking to other people, they were like, right, do you want to, come and help out in the producing department? So I did that, started being the producer, and then the associate director left, and they were like, and we've got a new artistic director, and they were like, well, who would be good to look after the literary department? And he very kindly said, Fleur is the best person. So that's how I ended up in the literary department. And it's so weird, because then I realized that actually I was really good at this, and this is what I really liked. And I just thought, I wish I'd known all of those years ago that actually the literary work is where my heart is, and I'd known how to get into it. But maybe the different careers that I've had along the way has really helped to become the person that I am now. And do you know what I mean? So it's like I could have done a course in I don't know, dramaturgy in some university, but in actual fact, my life experiences within the theatre has probably helped much more. So yeah, so that's where I am at the moment. I've actually kind of like also, though I've left the theatre building as such, and I'm just doing some freelance work, which is quite scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's really fascinating to hear how you came to the literary department after kind of all that experience. And it's, you know, the conversations we've had during doing this series is that everyone's come to the literary department, you know, in a different way.
Yeah.
And also as well, that most people didn't set out at the very beginning, didn't say, right, I want to be a literary manager. I want to work in a literary department. They've maybe come at it, you know, from being a playwright first or an actor first. And I think you're definitely right what you say there in terms of having that experience in theatre. You know, it must inform what you do then when you're in the literary department.
Yeah, well, this is it, you see. So, like, I mean, even at drama school, you had lessons about working on a script, looking at a script, you know, all of those things that you know about. With Anthony, when I worked with him on a show at the Royal Court, that was all improvised. So therefore it came from us. We devised it together. So we would talk and improvise stuff, and then he wrote it from the work that we'd done during the day. So it's always a collaborative process, always. And yeah, in my spare time, I used to read plays, and that's the other thing as well, you know, and then you don't realize, oh yeah, no, that's what and you just think everybody does that. And then you go, oh no, everybody doesn't do that, you know, and that's what yeah, but I did. And that's when I realized that's what I enjoyed more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, you know, that you say as well about it being a collaboration all the time as well. And, you know, having that kind of practical side of things. Because I think that sometimes as new writers, when we think about literary departments and sending our work off, we think about someone who's, you know, sitting there reading the script, simply saying yes or no, you know, and not that kind of collaboration that goes on behind the scenes. That's something that we don't always know about unless we've been through the process.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is. And even if you pick up on a script, so even with the, you know, you find something that you go, this is really great. Do you know what I mean? Even at that point, even if a theatre goes, this is what we want to engage with, this is the person that we want to talk to, at that point, the artistic director will get involved, maybe some actors will get involved, and that process is carried on, and the writer will be in the room, and you might have to do more rewrites, but it is still a collaborative process in order to get that play in the position that everybody wants it to be. So yeah, even along the way. But it's so hard because writers are often just in a room by themselves, that they don't get the luxury of being able to work with a group of people to create a piece of work. That seems to be very few and far between now, you know. It's money at the end of the day, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? And so much changes from, you know, as a new writer, you might write a script and you might even write at home on your own. You might go through 5 or 6 drafts or even more, you know, really think you've perfected it. And then obviously, you know, you're just kind of at the start of that journey, because if it does get selected, then you will go through this process where you probably will need to rewrite again.
Yeah.
And as you say, that's something that it is a luxury that many writers don't get to experience, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that as well, as a new writer, if you are putting your work into a theatre, it's good to know that this will happen to your script as well, and to make sure that you are open to the process, because yeah, somebody else will have their opinion on it and want to work on it as well, you know. So yeah, it's good to know that even though in some ways if your play is accepted by a theatre to for a reading or for a production, that again is the start of another journey with that play, and that it will go on many different. There was a play that we selected for, ended up as a production, and it's amazing what the first draft that we selected and that first reading, and then the actual end piece that was produced, completely different. Do you know what I mean? The essence of the story was still there, but yeah, it had gone through many different lives before it ended up on the stage. So,
yeah. It's amazing, really, and so many different things pop up. I mean, even when you have the first reading of a play just in a room with actors, just a very rough sort of table, even that can kind of provoke, so many edits and, different creative decisions and changes to the play.
Yeah, and also different actors.
Yeah,
a different actor will take your words and take it in a different direction. And that's what's always amazing. I was talking to a writer recently that had a reading of her play, and then I selected it for another reading. But we had local writers up here, local actors up here reading it. And so therefore it was different accents that were coming out. And that changed the play again, and yeah, so it's always everything is good for a writer to look at and go, maybe it should be that. So yeah, it's always good. It's always good.
Yeah, it's really important to be open, isn't it, I guess, and not see your play maybe as this finished product.
Yeah,
when you're going in.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, don't get me wrong. I think as a writer, you need to be, when you're writing a play, you need to have that in your mind, that when you have got your finished script and you're going to send that off to somebody, that has to be your imagined, finished, as much as it can, piece of art, and that is what you are sending off. But even though this is your baby, don't, let somebody else cut its hair. That's, that's the kind of like the essence of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Can you tell us a bit about the selection process? Because obviously, you've been experienced in a literary department. And can you tell us about kind of how in your experience, how scripts are selected and what literary departments might be looking for?
Yeah, it's entirely dependent on the theatre most of the time. But what I would say is the process. So the practical process is a script will come in. Obviously, most theatres get hundreds of plays. So your play in the first instance will only get the first 10, 20 pages read. And that is just it. Some theatres will only ask for the first 10, 20 pages. And it's just logistics, because those people that are working in the theatre, it's not because they don't care, it's just that those people that are working in the theatre, probably like myself, I was working in the literary department, but I was also a producer, so I had two jobs to do. You read the first 10 to 20 pages, and like I say, it's just logistics because of time. From there, there'll probably be like a couple of sentences about a play, whether they think it has potential. From there, the play will probably go through to a group of readers, which will be given a full read. It's never only one person that reads your play. It will always be a minimum of two people. Okay. And that's the most important thing, because if you're someone who looks after a literary department like myself, you look at plays in a different way. But if you are a reader, especially if you're a volunteer reader, you might be a bit more biased. I'd often get people coming back to me with reports saying, I didn't like it, there was too much swearing. Now, for me, I don't care if there's too much swearing. Do you know what I mean? That's not something that would put me off a play, but that's the sort of thing that you get back. But so you have to kind of, even as someone who is head of that department, you have to also kind of read the reading reports, if you know what I mean, and just understand that maybe it's a good play, actually, just because someone has said something like that doesn't necessarily mean it should go in the bin, kind of thing. So then it gets a couple of people reading it. Then it comes back. And so as someone who's the head of the department, you would also send it out to two very different readers as well. Okay, yeah. So for me, I had a variety of people. I would always try and send it to different genders as well as different ages, just so that you've got a variety of reports coming back to you about a certain play. If at that point they have marked it like 5, you should put this on, or 4, 5 out of 5, or it gets a stunning report, then it comes back and it would get read by one of the senior readers in the department. So for me, it was either myself or the associate director, or even the artistic director, depending on how busy he was. So, and then it would get read by one of us, and then it would get selected for a reading or for a production. However, in the theatre that the last theatre I worked at Stephen Joseph, all the work that would get selected at that point, it would never go directly to production. It would still have a reading first, because then the artistic director would come and watch the reading, gauge how the play is on stage, but also audience reaction and how it would fit in our space. So even the play reading itself was still a step on that journey. So that's kind of how it works. There are various different ways. I think the difficulty for any writer is that first stage, the 20 pages, and how do you make sure it doesn't get put down? I'd often get, because we'd ask for a synopsis as well, and I'd often get wait till you get to act 3, it's amazing, and I'd go, I might not even get to act 3, but I think if you can get the essence of your writing style, even if nothing happens in those first 20 pages, if you can get you as a writer over, it will come across and people will know and people will be interested. And the amount of times that myself and my colleagues have been there reading something for 20, you're supposed to only read it for 20 pages, but if you get hooked in, you go, I've read the whole thing, and I was only supposed to read 20 pages. And that happens a lot, especially when you get something that's really good, that really is like, I just need to see how this is. So sometimes I have sat there and read a play all the way through and then sent it out to the readers, but I was like, it's great. So
yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think as well, sometimes, when writers are just starting out, it's easy to kind of spend the first few pages, you're still figuring it all out yourself. So you can spend the first kind of few pages just kind of easing yourself into the story. So I guess it's making sure that before you submit it, you've really gone through all those kind of redrafts to make sure that you're not doing that, and that you really can, hopefully get the reader to read the whole thing in one go, because you don't want to put it down.
And when I say the first 20 pages, don't put like, and they got murdered in the first page. It doesn't have to be something really dramatic right at the beginning. Of course it doesn't, because sometimes you are, like you say, establishing just character. But what I will say is don't take up those first 10, 20 pages with lots of scene direction. There are 3 settees, the clock on the wall is hanging up. Try not to be too descriptive, and with the cast list as well, things like that, because if you have only got 20 pages to send through and 6 of those pages is just characters, and they're not reading your writing, and that's what you need people to be doing. So that's what I would definitely say. Don't do that. But I know that as well for the BBC Writers' Room, I think they do a similar thing where it's just the first 10, 20 pages. Yeah. And probably a lot of theatres do, even if they don't say it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just time for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think from what you've just said there as well, I can really see now, and I think this is really valuable for people watching this to know who might be sending their scripts off, why the process when you submit your work is so long, because obviously that your script, if it does get ready, it's going through so many different readers, and obviously everyone's pushed for time, and you're receiving a lot of scripts as well, so it's kind of easy to see from that why it can take weeks or months to hear back.
Absolutely. And for anyone who is worried that a script is like there for, if a script is with a theatre for 6 months, a year, that's better in a way, because it means they're still considering it. So if say I was working on in the literary department on a Friday, and I was doing and I was aware that some people are still on my list that have submitted their script 2 months ago, and I've still not got round to them. Do you know what I mean? It's really hard. And it is just about kind of like reading that. But when you send it out to a reader, usually I would probably send 2 scripts out to one reader at a time and say to them, especially because we had volunteer readers, if they're getting paid, you can put deadlines on somebody. But if they were volunteers, then I'd say you've got a month to send those 2 reports back to me, and that's for 2 plays. Sometimes they would come back in a week, but these people are doing other jobs and reading the reports, not as their full-time job, not reports, as they're reading the scripts, not as their full-time jobs, but in their spare time. But then when it comes back to us and we're reading the play, that's 2, maybe 3 hours of your time, so if you're working a 7-hour day, you can probably read 2 scripts, maybe 3, but also you get really tired when you're reading, and also you want to give the script the time. You don't want to kind of like rush through it and just, be a bit blasé about it. So, that's why it takes so long. But if a theatre is still looking at your script, then be happy that it's being considered rather than, But I think all theatres, I've met up with a lot of dramaturgs, and that they try to be as transparent as possible to writers, and that's why it does say it's going to be 6 months before we can get back to you, because also if a writer then gets back in touch with the theatre and says, oh, I haven't heard from you, that takes up a person's time by going, I know you're still in the process, don't worry. And if you've got 15 of those people, that's an hour gone.
Yeah.
Just by answering those emails, as opposed to having time to read the scripts. So it's all a balancing act. So
yeah, it's kind of managing expectation, isn't it? I know we had a similar thing because we had a script window last year and we received so many more scripts than we were expecting, and we hadn't put a time frame on it because we didn't know that we were going to get so many scripts. And then, you know, obviously lots of people were emailing and saying, have you just lost my script? You know, are you reading it? So I think that's a good thing when we see on websites for theatres, you know, it will take us 6 months to get back to you, but, you know, don't worry, we have got it. It's kind of reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah.
What would you have any advice for how writers should approach submitting their work? So say if that, you know, there's an emerging writer and they've got a play that they consider to be finished, you know, do you think that should send your work up to more than one theatre at once, or is there anything we should be doing first?
Yes is the answer. I mean, I always say send it to as many people as possible, really, because if one theatre doesn't like it, well, there's two things. As we were saying, it takes a long time. The process takes a long time. So if you've only sent your play to one theatre and they don't like it, they could have sat on it for 6 months, maybe 8 months, and then reject it. So you've spent 8 months with one theatre and you could have sent it out to more than one theatre. Also, sometimes what's right for one theatre is not right for another theatre. And it's not necessarily because it's poor quality, it's just because subject matter isn't right, or that they are producing something that's similar. I always use the example of a lovely script that came in to me that was about a group of Morris dancers meeting, and we just put Stepping Out on. So whilst it was a completely different play, it was the similar play. So there was no way on earth we would ever have produced it, at least for 3 or 4 years. Do you know what I mean? So it's just timing sometimes that your play could have a similar, you know, subject matter to something else. So do not send it to as many theatres as you can. However, I also think that you should try and I do think you should try and tailor your script to a theatre, because it is about doing research. I've done, and it exactly for that purpose. You know, I will have had a rewriting of Alice in Wonderland drop on my desk when we did Alice as the Christmas show. And it's like, what's the point? What's the point? You know, I'm just going to reject it because I haven't even read the work, but I'm just going to reject it because. So do look at what theatres have put on. Also look at what theatres are putting on and maybe what's missing, because your play might be the final piece of the jigsaw. So for us in Scarborough, we would always say, and I think that it's really important to go onto a theatre's website and see if they've got a new writing page and see what they are looking for, because it is great to be cheeky and go, this is my play. I know you're not looking for anything like this, but I'm a great writer. But because that other person hasn't really got time to look at that and they're not looking for a play, you know, about whatever, then they are just going to reject it, but maybe for the wrong reason. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, So I would say, as much as you can, try and look at what a theatre is looking for. We always said with Alan Ayckbourn working with us, we don't want anything like Alan Ayckbourn because we have him writing a new play for us every year. So we don't want anything like that. What we want is something new and different. And in our autumn slot, we would always have a new piece of work or a fairly new piece of work that we would put on. So it's about an emerging writer recognizing what the new pieces of work are that a theatre is putting on, and looking at the style and content of that and go, that is what my play could be. I will send my play to them. So whilst I say send it to everybody, I also think you should do a little bit of research to the theatres that you're sending your play out to.
Yeah, I see. Because I mean, ultimately, each theatre, they're looking for plays that they can produce at their theatre, aren't they? They're not necessarily, I guess, just looking to say, oh yeah, that writer's good and that play's good. It's something that they can ultimately put on in their venue.
Yeah, because if there's a play that they really like, but they go, I like you as a writer, but I don't like this play, what they will do is they will say, can you send me something else?
Yeah.
Because I really like you, but this play isn't right for us at this moment in time. So that is another thing as well that I always tell writers, always have more than one play, because if you go, oh, I haven't written anything else, then there is nothing else to send off. But that's okay. No one's going to judge you for that. It's just, oh, that's a shame, because I would have liked to have read something else that you've written.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Because you've made the contact then as well. So you've got that moment where you could send a script off that would be read, and then not to have anything to give. It's probably...
Yeah. And in a way, I don't know whether this is the right or wrong thing to say, but I would also kind of like steer clear of any adaptations if you can.
Okay.
Because I feel that from the knowledge that I have, if a theatre wants to do an adaptation, they will look for a writer to do that adaptation, as opposed to a new writer bringing something in, however amazing it is. So maybe that is your second play in the background, that you can go, oh, well, actually, I've, adapted Wuthering Heights. Why don't you have a look at this? But yeah, I think, look at that. And also, there are a couple of pitfalls with things like adaptations where you need to have had the rights in order to do that. So a theatre will say, do you actually have the rights to do, a theatrical piece of Reservoir Dogs? And they might go, oh, no, I haven't. And then that's it. It's dead in the water, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame then, really, isn't it? And it's interesting, actually, because a lot of the new writers I work with, it is quite popular to write adaptations, I think, because often maybe, we might read a novel that we find really inspiring and think that would make an excellent stage play. But it's really worth thinking about the pitfalls of that, and whether, as you say, it's worth maybe, if you want to do that, then great. But A, making sure you've got the rights, and B, maybe having it as a second play and writing something original as well, so you've got both, really.
Yeah, and this is the thing, because I often will watch a TV program or a film or read a book and go, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I'd love to see this on stage,
Yeah.
But yeah, an artistic director will also have had that idea and go, I want it, and then find a writer to do that project. So it kind of works the other way round with adaptations.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's it's hard to write. Yeah. It can be a waste of time for a writer, to be fair. Yeah, because also a lot of the times as well, artistic directors will already have things in the background that they're thinking about. So either that they want to work on a certain play, or do an adaptation of something, or have a story that they want to tell. But then that's when they would find the writer out. But you as a new writer to that theatre have got to sell yourself first.
Yeah, so you've almost got to kind of go through that first and then be the writer that they're looking for later on, I guess.
Exactly. And it's happened with me where there was a writer that sent in some plays that we really liked. We put on as little snippets. Then we were looking for something else, and we got in touch with them and said, could you write this? They had a seed commission to do something. We gave them some money. So there you go. So, and that was kind of almost an adaptation. It wasn't quite, but almost. And so that's the sort of thing. Yeah. But it's about getting your foot in the door first.
So doing that first, and then maybe something like that will come later. That's really valuable advice. Would you have anything that you'd say that writers really shouldn't be doing when they're submitting their work?
Yeah, that's a really hard kind of question, because for me, I say no, there isn't, because I never want to stifle someone's artistic vision. So I would say no. There's a few practical things that I would say that could help somebody, and that was one is try not to make your cast too big, because as a new writer trying to get into a theatre, especially if it's a small theatre, they won't have much money and if you are getting somebody like David Hare to write a play for you, yes, you can have a cast of 30 and that people are going to come and see and watch it, but if Fleur Hebditch has written a play, no one knows who she is. So, but if there's a cast of 1 or 2, then I'm not paying too many actors, or so it's less money that the theatre are expecting to lose on you as a new writer, if you know what I mean. So keep your cast really small is something that I would say, and that helps to sell your play. Don't get me wrong, there are plays that I've read that I put on as readings that have got 8 in the character, because it's great, and that's why I say I'm always like, there's always anomalies to whatever I'm saying, because sometimes you go, but this is just amazing and we need to put it on, even if it has got a cast of 25, but it would never have been produced, but we could do it as a reading, but so there's that. So I would say yes, keep your cast small. What are the other things that I would say don't do? Like I've said before, don't be too prescriptive at the beginning, because the first 20 pages really matter with something. But as far as content goes, anything, because it's your voice, and that's the most important thing to remember, I feel. And who knows, you don't know who the other person is who's going to be reading your script, so you've got no idea. Do you know what I mean? They might just go, oh, this is amazing, or this is exactly what I've just been through, and therefore it's important to me to tell this story.
Yeah, you can't second guess, can you really? You don't know who's going to be reading it, so you kind of need to be authentic to your own ideas, don't you? Because you can't guess who's reading it.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on playwriting competitions?
Well, yeah, I think they're great. I mean, it's quite contentious, I know, with writers, because it's making writers compete against each other, which sounds awful, because it should not be a competition. It should not be a competition. However, I think they are really great ways to get your work read and possibly seen, because a lot of those competitions out there are level playing fields, whether you are an established writer or you have never, this is your first play. So and a lot of them, because a lot of them are anonymous as well, I would say yes, always just put your play in there, because you just never know, you know. I would obviously try and make it as finished as you can. It's very difficult. You need to know when that deadline is to send your play in, and make sure that you've drafted draft number 3, 4, I don't know, whatever it is that you've got to do. But yeah, send it off. I think you've got nothing to lose, because actually, if there are 1,000 plays that go into a competition, and maybe the play that you've sent in isn't great and you're a bit embarrassed about it or whatever, doesn't matter, because they're going to forget, you know. And so, but actually, if you get down to the last 10 or the one that wins, it's amazing, you know. And so I think competitions are good. I hate the fact that it's, you know, it feels like the wording competition is wrong, but the actual act of the competition is great, I feel. And I would recommend any writer to just go for it, because like I say, you've got nothing to lose. It's fine. And if you win, you get, you know, money as well as, you know, sometimes a production. So it's great, and you could be there. And yeah, I like the anonymous ones probably more, because I, as someone who's had when I get a script in a theatre, I never read about that person. So I know some readers will Google who sent this in, and I don't, because I'm like, I do not want to be influenced by who has read this, because if I recognize their name, I don't want to know. Do you know what I mean? So I never do that before I've read something. And then afterwards, if I've really liked it, then I might have a Google of that person. Yeah. But I never do it before, because I just think a play should be read on its own merit. And that's what anonymous competitions do. So yes, go for it is what I say.
Oh, that's really good advice. Yeah, and as you say, I mean, because it's, you know, especially the anonymous ones, it's a level playing field, isn't it? Just go for it, because some of the prizes as well are, but sometimes it's really good. As you say, production, some money. So yeah, what have you got to lose, really?
And to be fair, like I'm always quite surprised when we've had submissions through, and I get established writers sending me plays, because I'm like, but I know you. Why have you sent me a play? But it's really good to know that actually, even though someone is an established writer, or that you know them, they are still sending their plays in via the submission windows. They are still sending their plays in via the competitions. So yeah, you know, because it's a way of getting your work read and out there. So yeah, do it. Go for it.
That's great advice. Thank you. And you've given some amazing advice today, and some brilliant tips that I think people can take away. Do you have sort of one most important bit of advice that you'd give playwrights submitting their work, who are wanting to get their work produced?
Yes. And that is just never forget the writer that you are, because your voice is what's been on that page. So regardless of everything else that I've said about, you know, making it the right play for the right theatre, or those are practical tips, you know, cast size, all of it, you know. But if you have this, it should always be about the art, and it should always be about your voice. And yes, people will take your play and change it, and it might feel like it's unrecognizable to you, but that doesn't matter, because the next play, and the next play after that, and then the fourth play that you get produced, people will be wanting you to write their plays, and because of who you are. So always be mindful of you as an artist, and your writing, and the stories that you want to tell. And I think that's the best advice to any writer, and even if, I always think about somebody, I mean, it sounds really bad, but you think of someone like Van Gogh, or someone, who his work never got seen till he died. And, and I don't want all these writers to go, their work not to be produced until after they're dead, but because you need to enjoy it, but still be true to you, and you'll make some great art.
Thank you. That's amazing advice. It's great. Yeah, thank you. And just one final question that I wanted to ask is that, would you have any advice for anyone who's wanting to work in a literary department?
Literary departments are always really small in a theatre. So the jobs that are available are really few and far between. But they are out there, and people move around, and people leave, and people do this, that, and the other. So as a way in, offer your services as a reader, and, just say, do you have a department where people read? And if you have to work voluntary to begin with, just do it, because then you have that on your CV.
Yeah.
For the next job. So but a lot of the time theatres probably won't advertise, do you know what I mean, for volunteer readers, but I had people that joined my department reading for me, that had just got in touch with me on a whim and said, I've had Zoom calls with people to talk about how to get into the literary department. Do you know what I mean? And we all know that theatres are very transient, and people come and go all the time. But if you are offering your services for free, then that theatre will also know that you will leave at a moment's notice. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's give and take all the time. So just write to the literary department and say, look, I just wondered if you need any reading, and that is a way in, because most people will go, yes, I would love some help, thank you very much. Yeah. Like I say, some places that pay for readers, or some competitions might need people that are more established, but if you get in at that level, then other work will come, and other work will come, and you'll get to know people, and that's the best way.
Yeah, I see. And I mean, going back to what you said at the beginning, actually, about the readers that you've worked with, when they're volunteers, you don't send them hundreds of scripts to read. You might say couple a month, or however many you can manage, especially if you're working for free. So it's not as though people have got to, they might have a full-time job doing something else, but you could just read a couple of scripts perhaps, and just get your foot in the door, I suppose.
And as a writer, I also think it's a really good lesson, because you are reading somebody else's work, and you can then see what works and what doesn't work. Also, I've just remembered something else. Don't make your play too long.
Oh yeah.
We all want our play to be, on at the National and all of this, but actually in reality, your first play will be probably a tiny studio piece. So make it that tiny studio piece is what I would say. But yeah, just try and volunteer. There are quite a lot of theatres out there that do have submission windows and readers, and as long as you can just say, I'm really interested in working in a literary department, I think most people will just consider you, and then you're doing it, and even if you just did it for 1 month, 2 months or something, then it's invaluable, I think, as well.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a start, isn't it? Thank you. That was brilliant. So much valuable stuff in there that I know people will take away. Thank you very much for chatting to us today. It's been great.